Hello, friends, and welcome back to Living Divinely. I'm so excited about today's episode because I feel like it's going to be fun. I feel like you guys are going to really enjoy today's conversation, but I want to talk a little bit about storytelling. The purpose of this episode is me to really talk about my return to fiction writing and why that return has been both creative, but also somewhat of a homecoming for me. All right, so let's get into the episode. I have coffee. I feel like I haven't recorded with a cup of coffee in a minute. I have coffee for those of you who want a cup of coffee. I'm giving you a little bit, pause real quick, go grab yourself a cup of coffee, and then we'll get into today's conversation. Yum, delicious. But yeah, so let's let me figure out where I want to begin. For a really long time, I walked away from writing fiction. There were so many reasons. I think a big part of it was just like life got full. Life got incredibly full. My focus shifted a little bit. I started prioritizing other types of work, things that felt a little bit more practical and were more rooted in teaching, strategy, and different forms of service. And I think in doing so, I unknowingly and just subconsciously like distance myself from probably one of the most intentional and sacred parts of me. And that was me being this very detailed and imaginative storyteller. I have been telling stories for a really long time. I remember being a kid and like sitting in my great grandfather's living room and writing all these things down on paper. I've probably been writing for as long as I could remember. Like, I barely could pick up a pencil, and I was leveraging my imagination to tell stories. There was a time when I was really, really young and I couldn't really craft a story on paper, so I would act them out. And it was funny for my family. Like, my family would be like, "Oh, do that little play that you came up with." But I think in hindsight, it was me just figuring out a way to use my imagination in any way that I could. And then it just turned into me writing things down on paper and writing down these visions that I have or these characters that come to life through me. And I don't know. I feel like I'm aging myself by talking about this, but when I was young, when I was in like junior high and high school, and this seems so insane that this even existed, but there was a place, I can't think of the name, but it was like a black, I would love for them to bring this back, but it was a place where they sent you a catalog of all the black fiction novels that exist. And it was like pages and pages of pages of books that you can order by black authors. And your first order, everything was like $1. And then from like therefore they're going forward, like it was still super cheap. But you would get every book for $1 on your first order. And I remember my mom ordering this like huge box of books. And I remember going through it, the package getting delivered, and one of the first books that I read out of that box was Tracy Brown's Black. And when I tell you I was like from start to finish, I read that book in a day. I didn't put the book down. I didn't go to bed that night because I stayed up all night reading, and I remember like getting maybe like a hour and a half, 2 hours of sleep. And like my Spanish teacher calling my mom the next day, like, "Yeah, your daughter slept through class." But it was just like reading was so important to me back then because it gave me it gave me inspiration. It gave me a voice. And let me retract. It gave me a voice when I was still figuring out what my voice was. And I think coming back to writing fiction was a very intentional decision for me. I talked about this a little bit on TikTok, but I'm going through a period of growth and transition, and I'm coming out of healing from an experience. Again, I can't really talk about it too much in detail, but it was just a very traumatic experience, and I'm still unraveling through that and like having to go to therapy and talk through it. But coming back to this is has been helpful throughout this experience because I really needed a safe space. I needed a place where I could hold grief and joy and beauty all in the same hand. And fiction allows me to do that. Fiction allows me to create space for myself where I don't have to explain the weight of what I'm feeling, where the characters that I create could carry and say the things that I feel like I'm unable to fully say or articulate. I think the most interesting and beautiful thing about writing fiction and storytelling is that sometimes the characters have no connection to you outside of what you're feeling. And even if the stories of you and your characters are not the same, sometimes the loss or the grief or the uncertainty that your characters feel is something that you are feeling as well. And you can just articulate those feelings through them. And I think that's what came through for me when I started working on or reworking and reimagining what this short story is, which is now titled The Stillness Between Us. So I feel like what a lot of people do not know is about 12 or 13 years ago, I wrote a fiction anthology. And I don't talk about this because the writing, like I said, I read a lot of stories, I read a lot of fiction, and those books that I read, they gave me a voice when I didn't know my own voice. And so these stories are low key like cringe. Because it was me trying to tell a story in a way. It was just me trying to tell stories, me wanting to get out what me wanting to create, but y I can't even describe it really. About 12 years ago, I wrote all of these short stories and put them together in a fiction anthology. There was a big buzz online through these stories. The original version of the story started to develop like 15 years ago. And let me tell y'all, this is how you know like the book was on that, like it was in that hood storytelling era because the original story was titled Knee Deep in the Game. Yeah. But like I said, it was a time before my voice was fully developed, before I fully knew who I was. But at that time, I somehow still managed to put language to the parts of myself that longed to be seen and heard. Back then, I didn't really know how to articulate my emotions out loud. And I think the best way to do that was through characters, through my stories, because I feel like like, that allowed me the space. Like, they knew, the characters knew. And ultimately that's how I build my characters. Like I hear them first, I see them first before a single word is like written on paper. I can see them in my mind. And I just found out, no joke, like a year ago that it is not common for people to be able to see the things that they are reading and listening to in their mind. Like there are a very small percentage of people in the world who can read something and envision what they're reading. When it comes to the characters, before I actually start putting pen to paper, like I see where they live, the type of music that they listen to, what they're wearing, how they smile. Like, I see all of those details in my mind. I know how they move, the way that they love, the things that they're hiding. A lot of the characters that I create are often rooted in people that I know, but they're exaggerated or reimagined. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about storytelling in fiction is it lets you borrow real life and reshape it through emotion, memory, and imagination. The Stillness Between Us, the main character was actually created by someone years ago that I was getting to know at the time. And as I was getting to know this person, I'm like, they talk a lot, but they don't say a lot. And typically, I think typically it's understood or common for men that they don't know how to articulate their words, but it was something in communicating with this person where you could tell like they had a really great sense of humor and they talked about things that humored them and they joked to lighten the load or not to fully be seen. And I saw through that and I was able to create this character through that experience of like, I see you. You know, you're not saying anything. I see you. And I think that's a big part of my work too, is being able to empathize with people and also being incredibly intuitive. One thing that clients always ask me is, why would I like, what makes your work different from anybody else? And I'm able to confidently say, because I know what you need before you can tell me. I know what you need before you know what you need, or I know what you need before you have the words to articulate what you need. And that's just how I work. I can intuitively pick up on things before they are said or done. And that's the beauty of being a storyteller. Sometimes you just know. There was this world before the brand decks, the workshops, the digital strategy and creativity where all I had was my words. Like I would write poetry on Tumblr and then it turned into me having my own website and that's where I would do my short stories. I just wanted to make sense of what I felt but couldn't explain. I think that's why I also felt such a huge nudge or urge to like write books because there was so much that I was holding on to and I needed to get them out. Even if I never saw them again, I never want to see those books again. But I think somewhere along the way, I was creating and then I silenced that part of myself. And it wasn't out of loss, but I think it was out of responsibility. I shifted toward what served. And I feel like I thought I had to like teach and guide people to be valuable in the field that I was working in and that if I wanted more people to take me seriously, like I couldn't write fiction. The responsibility part of it too was a heavy weight because people had this expectation, especially family, especially people that you know personally. You're releasing this project, this creative project. You're doing something that the family has never seen or done before, which is someone in my family is an author. They've written a book. And so everybody has their opinion. You should do this, you should do that. You should create like this, you should create like that. And I remember one time, no joke, very vividly, I will never forget this. I remember a family member telling me, "Oh, well, I'm not going to support the books until you write a continuation to this story." I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, well, you're going to be waiting a lifetime because that's not going to make me budge. That's not going to force me into the space where I'm going to create something that I don't feel like creating. Sometimes the work is just putting it out there. Sometimes there's never a continuation. Sometimes the one story is just the one story. And I think that's what I enjoy about short stories. There is no pressure to create anything beyond that. You can write that and there may never be a continuation. There may never be a full novel that comes out of it. It's just something that you needed to create and put on paper and put out into the world. Throughout this process and like stopping and moving on to other things, I think what has pushed me back into this space was being shifted internally, being shifted creatively. experiencing a lot of grief. That changed me. Motherhood changed me. Being able to be still and figure out what works for me, all of that shifted me and changed me. Most recently, I realized that I miss creating in a way that allows me to breathe. I miss creating and telling stories that don't require a call to action or a brand funnel, just stories that really tell the truth about becoming, whether it's my own personal becoming or it's a fictional becoming and it's stories that other people can relate to. Just really stories that make space for softness, contradiction, unspoken knowing, like stories that allow you an escape. We don't have that enough. We are living in a time where everything is forced down our throats. Pain, rejection. We can literally log online at any given moment and see something tragic happen. Like we've watched people literally be murdered on online. We are exposed to so much. It's important to revisit outlets that allow us to escape for a little bit, allow us to dream, allow us to fantasize, imagine. Our imagination is so important. I realized this at a very, very young age. Like you have a very unique quality, and that's being able to imagine anything. One of the most beautiful parts about motherhood is my son, just watching him imagine things. Like he can be sitting and he's like, "Oh, I'm on a boat. I'm fishing." I never want him to lose that, because when we lose that, we get caught up in the world and we think the world is the only thing that we have to anchor us to reality, when it doesn't serve us to always be anchored to reality. Sometimes we need to release that anchor and find something to drown in, and not in a physical sense, but sometimes we just need to drown in a great story. We need to be happy, even if it's only for a moment. We need to cry. The best release you will ever have is a moment to cry. Sometimes I'll read a book or watch a movie and I'm just like, damn, I needed to feel that, because it forced something out of me that I was holding in for a really long time. I have been dealing with something like very heavy, as I mentioned, and I watched The Lifeless. It affirmed so much of what I needed to hear, and I was just like boo hoo crying watching that movie. And I was like, damn, I needed this. Sometimes you just need it. You need to cry. That's why it was so important for me to return to this form of storytelling, because even while I was writing it, I was like getting choked up, like, this is so good. Storytelling matters because it allows us to tell the truth without explanation. You can sit down right now, write a story, say everything that you've been wanting to say about anything or anyone, and you could do that without explanation. Nobody would question it. When you create a story or a character and you tell a story through them, those characters, they hold our rage, they hold our softness, they hold our tenderness. They remind us that we are still allowed to dream, even in the heaviness of the world. In sharing my return to this form of art and creativity, I really hope to inspire others to do the same, to revisit the creative parts of yourself that you've buried or you feel that you've lost. I want us to find healing in imagination. I want us to write the stories that allow us to feel, to be expressive, and to exist without constraint. I want to inspire you, if you've ever felt silenced by your creativity for the sake of survival. If you have been someone who have pushed your creativity, the stories, the hobbies, push those away because life demanded something else from you. This is your reminder to return to those things. I've been so inspired by Ryan Coogler. Man, like, it's a powerful thing to see other Black creators just live in their art and create a living doing what they love. That's powerful. It's a different level of connection point when there are very small degrees of separation. I was born in Oakland, but I grew up in Richmond. And so being from the Bay Area and just seeing that, like, that is it's a different level of connection, and you can only hope to be able to work with someone so talented and so gifted and so skilled. Like, that's the goal. Like, from one creator to another, from my lips to God's ears one day. Um, I hope to be able to partner with Ryan just on whatever. I think I literally would be dust on a table in a writer's room on a project if I could. I think it's important to see his art on film, um, for all of us. It's important for any Black storyteller to bring their stories to life and be an example for all of us. That is power. And it's something that we all need to see. As creators, we inherit this belief that we have to be one way, we have to do one thing. And I want to be someone who cracks that mold as a creator, as a visionary, as a storyteller, as a Black woman, as a mother, as someone who is multi-talented. I want to crack that mold. I want to dissolve that invisible wall, because we tie ourselves like, oh, I have to do this and I have to stick to this. When I was brought up, the goal or the rule was, oh, you get you a nice government job, you work for the city, you do that. And that was the push. That was the goal. And it's just like, it was incredibly unheard of to be someone who strives beyond that. Like, actually, no, I'm going to take my art serious. I'm going to take my creativity seriously. It's very rare that people see the value in that. And they try to put you in this mold, put you in this box. You can play with that, but that's not a life. That's not a career. And so we fear, as creators, we're in fear of living beyond that. We think that we have to do one thing and that one thing be our source of truth. And that's not the reality. We can do everything that we feel called to do. I've lived many lives on this earth and I have so many more to live, but creatively, I have exhausted a lot so far. I've authored books, I've created a magazine, I've had multiple websites, I've worked with multiple brands, Fortune 500 companies. I've done a lot. And that's not even, I can tell you for free, that was child's play. I learned a lot, I grew a lot creatively, but that was child's play. What I'm about to do and where I'm headed is, it's going to exceed far beyond that. And we should feel empowered to feel that way always. We should feel empowered to tell our stories and do things simultaneously. You can create stories, you can design interiors, you can build brands, you can draw, you can sketch, you can write, you can direct. You can do all those things at one time. Who is stopping you? If you have the ability to create and do multiple things and have multiple streams of income, multiple outlets of creativity, who is to tell you that's not right, that's not okay? These are your God-given gifts and talents. There's a quote by Lana Del Rey, and it was just like, at the end of this life, like, I want to be able to look at God and say that I've exhausted every gift or every talent that you have given me. That's the goal in life. It really is. Like, that's all it is. You can do whatever it is that you feel called to do. There's nothing stopping you from exercising all of your gifts in this life. As for me, I feel like I'm just getting started. I really do. I feel like this is only the beginning. I'm excited to share the stillness between us. I've archived and revised the story with new eyes, and it will be available on my website. I'm thrilled because, like I said, I have a whole book, but I also have so many stories where I've like drafted out these characters, and am going to just build an archive of stories that are available for the sake of you being able to imagine a new world, dream a little bit, explore a little bit. But yeah, I'll share the link of where you will be able to read the stories. Um, I'll also share the link to my newsletter so that you guys can stay up to date when new stories are releasing. And I just hope that the stories, this space that I'm building, feels like home, you know, a home away from home. If anything that I shared today resonated with you, I would love to know in the comments. Tell me about the stories that you are returning to, the things, the arts and the creativity that you're returning to in this present moment. Or whatever, something that you're waiting to be shared. You know, if anything resonated with you today, I would love to hear from you. Drop me a comment, tell me about the stories and the art that you're returning to and how it's inspiring you to be a better version of yourself. I really love hearing from you guys and would love to hear about it. And yeah, just continue to follow along for more insights on branding, intentionality, and self expression. And let's continue to build something meaningful and intentional together. Until next time, remember that the most powerful thing that you can create is a life and a brand that is truly your own. Thank you so much for listening, guys.